Hello, everybody, and welcome to a completely different day, and definitely not just like 10, 15 minutes since we stopped recording part one. It is a different day, different shirt, right?
Yep, different shirts.
Different shirts, different day, definitely different day. And along those lines, we need a new beverage. And Chris, let me tell you, I called my dad and told him to bring me some sort of a beverage to use for the second part of this video because I knew we were going to be filming it on a different day, which we're definitely doing. And so what he brought me was a Red Bull Winter Edition.
Ooh,
Pear cinnamon.
that sounds vile. I can't wait to hear about it.
Absolutely does sound terrible. And I don't know what drinking 2 Red Bulls in completely different days is going to do to me. But I'm a little bit worried, especially with how my system's not been normal for the last quite a while.
Well, the show must go on.
Okay, so
and this is an integral part of it.
Okay, so this is pear cinnamon. Interesting. That tastes a lot more like a soda pop, for sure. Like all the energy drinks I've had, they've tasted different than different than a soda pop, and or as we just call them in the Midwest, a pop. But this is the first energy drink I've tried that tastes like, oh, good, it's the good pea color again. That standard. Now this sucker's in a small can, so it's going to be even more ounce, 250 milliliters of pure energy, whatever. I don't know.
There was something earlier that we were talking about that I had thought that I'd sent to you.
I definitely get pear out of it.
That's interesting.
Something that you had thought you sent me, but you didn't?
Yeah, that I was talking about, and I was kind of surprised I hadn't sent it to you, and then I was gonna, and I...
Like a song?
Maybe, yeah. Song, probably song.
Now, I also have to say, even though this is a completely separate day,
Yep.
I have with me to eat during this video, because I like to do this now, is I have a piece of pie right here.
That looks amazing. I want that.
It's just a Marie Callender's pie. I'm very excited to eat it while you're talking, while I'm talking right now.
Have you ever had the Hershey's pie that you get at Burger King?
I have not.
That pie is, man, oh man, if I could get my hands on a full pie, one of those farts, I would just explode. And it is so good. It is so good. Man, oh man.
This is fantastic. I'm going to be eating it throughout the first probably 10 minutes of this video or whatever.
Good.
I just got to let everyone know, in case you missed the first part, don't do that. Go back and watch the first part. We talked for a long time about many things. Try to be a little bit more concise this video. However, we're here to discuss our numbers 6 through 1 of our respective top 12 albums of the year lists. This is something we do every single year. We very much look forward to it. This is probably the most effort I put into a video here on my channel each year in terms of the prep, listening to so many albums throughout the year, spending the time to get the lists just right. But we just got to say, these are our personal lists, and we go out of our way to make sure that people know this isn't necessarily the best albums of the year. These are just our personal top albums of the year. So with that in mind, one of the things we were going to talk about, Chris, that I don't know if we should or not, is our honorable mentions. However, I think that possibly one, if not 2 of my honorable mentions will be on your list still. I think one will.
Interesting.
So
I'd love to hear them then, and I'm not going to confirm or deny that.
Well, I was going to say, I think maybe we should not mention our honorable mentions until maybe we get to the end, or what are your thoughts?
I think that sounds great, because I don't really have any. I went through all of my otherwise albums, honorable mentions, or whatever, regular mentions in the last video, and I just don't have any extras laying around, so it would pretty much just be a you thing.
Well, as I said, I can't remember if I said this in the first video or if I said it off camera, as it were. But what I did was I basically made a long list of all of the albums that I liked, basically. And then I went through and I made each album that I thought had the potential to be on my list a specific color. And then what I did was I used that as a way to kind of separate everything. And then I took the 12 that ended up on my list and made them a third color. And so what I was left with then from that second color is what I have as my honorable mentions. So albums that I thought could make it onto my list and just ended up not making it on my list because there were 12 things better than those albums. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I mean,
So-
yeah, and that list I've gone through on my end already. So.
Yeah, so in that case, then I'll just do mine, I guess. It's no big deal. However, I'm pretty sure that there's one on here that is on your list.
I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Very much, I'm pretty sure.
'Cause as far as the rest of my list is concerned, maybe.
I would
maybe.
be very surprised if it's not on your list. Very surprised.
hear it.
So the albums that are on my honorable mentions are Green Lung. They just released a really fantastic album not too long ago. Really great album.
I remember you screeching about it over text.
Yes, I did. And I don't do that about very much. And when I listened to it again after the fact, Chris Schoenberg pointed out to me the lack of high frequencies in it. And so I was like, yes, I guess you're right about that. And normally that's something I really get all bent out of shape out of. But in this case, because it's the style of music that it is, which it's like blues, like stoner metal, what's the other term for that? Doom metal. It's that style of music, like very, very like Black Sabbath throwback sounding. But the keyboards are so cool on this album. It's just really, it's a really cool album. And their last album, Green Lung, I think only have 2 albums out, maybe 3. But their last album I really enjoyed, but it wasn't enough to make it, on my list that year at all. But this album I think is even better than that one. And it's a really cool album, but there's several songs that fade out on it, which kind of to me. And then I think there's really only like 7 full-length songs on it because the intro and the outro are like instrumental songs or something that are kind of like leading into things. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So that's Green Lung. Grace Potter, I've mentioned her multiple times over the last few videos. She has one song on her album that I can't listen to, and that really taints my opinion of the album as a whole. And I think overall, it's just not her best album. However, it was close to making it on my list. The Arcs, which is Dan Auerbach's second band, where he does vocals for, produces it. This is their second album. Their first album is really good and did make it on my list for the year that came out. But this is a whole album full of songs that were kind of leftovers from their first album that they put together because one of the main guys in that project passed away between their first album and this album being released. However, the fact that they're leftovers does not mean that the album's not fantastic. And there are some really, really cool Western sounding songs on there. But it just wasn't impressive enough to make it on my list. I probably should have listened to it more. It probably should be on my list, but it just didn't make it. Then I have two bands that I just discovered this year that are really interesting. One I just discovered the other day. A Finnish musician by the name of Jaakko Aino Kalevi. And this is a really special album. I've only had like 2 or 3 days to listen to it. It was so close to making my list at number 12. This was the album that would be my number 13. And this is a weird album, Chris. I like it when I listen. Normally, when I listen to an album, and you know this, I can tell you within 10 seconds of hearing the first song whether I'm going to love it or whether it's not for me, right? This album confused me from the moment I heard it. And I listened to the entire thing and I was still confused, but I kind of loved it. And because of that, it intrigues me more than anything I've heard this entire year.
Wow.
And so again, that guy's name is Jaakko Aino Kalevi. If anyone wants to look it up, his first name is Jaakko. Jaakko, I assume that's pronounced that way. Aino Kalevi. Very interesting album. I will probably show it to you sometime in the future, Chris.
Nice. I want to hear it.
Because it's so different and interesting. Then I have a band from Texas called Unity TX. I posted this on our shared chat with you and Chris Schoenberg, and Chris Schoenberg actually went and listened to it, and I did not mean for him to listen to it at all. It was for you, not him. But this is a rap metal band, and it's really good. This album is so good. It's very short though, and that's probably the thing that kind of hindered it from me. But like, there's a couple tracks that are just straight up hip hop songs with no band whatsoever. I love those tracks. There's like 2 or 3 or 4 songs that are no singing at all, just like the heaviest heavy thing you've ever heard. Think kind of like Korn with a little bit more hip hop production to it, and then a dude that's like a beast of a vocalist who can scream, yell, do all those things. Rap fantastically, sing pretty good, really versatile rap metal band, something that's not very prolific anymore. And then my last honorable mention band, which is the one that I'm fairly certain is going to be on your list. And I'm spoiling by telling you it's not on my list, but it probably won't surprise you that much. Metallica. 72 Seasons by Metallica. I tried so hard for the 5 Metallica fans that are going to watch these videos. I tried so hard to listen to this album and make it on my list. And the thing is, I love it. I like this album a lot. I may like it more than Hardwired. This may be my second favorite Metallica album. I love the riffs. I love the production. I love the vocal harmonies. I love everything about it, even the hi-hat. I think the mix sounds great coming out of speakers.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't enough to make it onto my list.
That's fair.
It's a slog. It doesn't have to be a slog. This album, you could easily cut 20 minutes off of this album, but I don't know. I have a feeling we'll get to talk about it more later. Don't tell me, but I have a feeling we'll get to talk about it more later. So those are my honorable mentions.
Cool.
So now on to your number 6.
Is it? What was your number 6?
Well, we were starting with you, I thought, this time. I can go first if you want.
Oh, yeah, look at that. All right. So this
It doesn't matter. We don't have to do that.
I'm fine. This is another band, artist, singular, that I have been aware of. I was, somebody brought them to my attention years ago, and I thought it was all right. And I added this, like I said in the previous video, I stuck it on my contenders playlist because I got it sent to me with, this is pretty good, and I listened to a couple songs, and I was like, yes, it is. This is the album I Love You, I'm Trying by Grandson.
You told me about Grandson years ago. Okay.
And I had completely lost touch with the idea. I've not listened to any Grandson since I told you about him. Mm-hmm. This album has only been on my list for a couple of days. And I was going through it yesterday, and because I was trying to decide, how much do I like this? Does it go on the list? Where on the list does it go? And I was listening to it, and I was like, man, I had like 2 or 3 songs back to back where I was like, this is like surprisingly enjoyable. I really like this a lot because it starts off in a way where it's like, okay, this is pretty rap heavy. It's good. I would recommend it to someone who is more into this type of music, but it might, it's not going to make my list for it. But then it jumped out of that realm and just went into more of a traditional song structure. Oh, I don't know if I like the way I worded that. Of just, singing melodies, things that I'm more prone to enjoying. And it just was like, have you ever had, okay, there's a song by Nothing More called Jenny. And that song is so fascinating to me because when you listen to it, even when you listen to it, like the first time you listen to it, for me at least, it was like everywhere I want this song to go, it goes there. It's like I'm predicting what's going to happen. And in all of the best ways where it's like, I want this to do this. It did it. And this has a lot of that same thing where it's like, okay, see now if I see where you're at here with this slow kind of whatever. If you went instead of I'd love it even more. And then it does that. And you're like, yeah, you see, you get it.
Yep.
And this is very much that. It's like, what kind of music is this? Do you remember Bill Murray?
Probably.
It's an album.
No. No, wait. What were you going to say? Finish that.
It's an album. Bill Murray is an artist that I've had on a couple of my top 12s, I think.
Yes.
And this feels like it's kind of in that same vein. It's It's relatively electronic. It's a darker tone for sure. Clean vocals.
What I remember from it is this sort of like Black Keysy almost production. Like there's like an analog feel to it.
Yes, I agree with that. That's still true. But it doesn't have like the whatever kind of groove or style that you would attribute to something like the Arctic Monkeys, that AM album specifically. I don't think it goes into that vein, but it's probably not too far off.
Okay.
It's darker. And yeah, it's tough to have this be above that Melmar album because I have so much more to say about that than this one, but it really surprised me. 12 songs, 32 minutes, so it's still, it fits, it follows all the rules.
Pretty short songs though.
Pretty short, yep.
But I will tell you one thing though. Like you said earlier, when an album has like 2 or 3 or 4 like just absolute bangers in a row, that really raises my opinion of the album overall. It's one thing to have like really good songs across the whole album, but if you have really good song, great song, great song, great song, really good song, really good, like it really raises it almost, in my opinion, like more than it probably should. But like, having banger after banger is like,
you get 2 or 3 songs where you're like, this is surprisingly good, and then you don't listen to the rest of the album for whatever reason. It's very easy to imagine that the rest of that album is not going to be able to bring it down past a certain point. And that's what I got out of this for sure. And I'm looking forward to listening to the rest of it because if it continues on the path that it's set in front of itself, it might even end up retroactively way further up the list.
All right, so we're on to my number 6. And I have a question for you, Chris.
Yes.
Do you like Beats?
By Dre?
No, just Beats. Like the best beats of all time.
And you don't mean like gazpacho?
Nope, I don't mean like red beets, sliced beets, pickled beets. I'm talking beets.
I mean, probably, but...
I tell you what, I love...
What do you mean?
I love beats, and I love music.
I don't know how to classify beats.
I love music with a freaking groove. Music that's just like, hey, buddy, come on over here. I want to show you something. And it's just... Like it's maybe not that was terrible.
That was a little bit...
Yeah, that was no.
Prodigy.
Yeah, smack my smitch up. No, okay,
You
sorry.
could have just not said it.
This is off to a bad start. My number 6 is
Beats by Dre.
no, Beats by Dre. Terrible. What's great is the album Good Night, God Bless, I Love You, Delete by Crosses.
Wow.
This is Beats. It's Beats. It's a feeling that you can't get from any other style or form of music other than just a frickin' cool drum beat. There's nothing like it. There's just nothing like it. So, 15 tracks, 50 minutes, and I think there's 1 or 2 of the songs is sort of like a leading into the following song. This is their second album ever, and it's been 9 years since their debut album, which I do have on CD, an album I really enjoyed at the time. This album blows that album out of the water, as far as I can remember. This band is from the United States. This is the electronic band that is done by a side project from Chino Moreno from the Deftones.
Oh, okay.
We've talked about them over the years a little bit, and last year they released an EP, and I listened to it, and I was like, whew, if this was an album, I tell you what, if this was an album, this would be pretty high on the list.
And now it is one?
No, they had too many songs to fit on this album, so they released an EP the year before.
Okay.
So this is 15 completely new tracks. Like I said, 1 or 2 of them I think might be like a little instrumental thing or something. But like, when I show you one of the songs from this, you're going to be like...
I can't wait.
I know exactly what you mean, Patrick. Like, every single one of these songs is basically the same thing. You have something quiet, and Chino Moreno singing his slow vocals over the top of it. And then the greatest beat of all time comes in over the top of it. And that's what every song is.
That's great.
And boy, is it a formula that I love. Some of the songs are a little short. You know, they're like under 3 minutes. And what the structuring of those songs is start quiet, bring the beat in. There's the chorus. Beat goes away. Verse 2. Bring the beat back in. That's the second chorus. The song's over. Normally that would bother me. And I'd be like, there's not enough song here. But because of what the songs are doing and the sort of simple thing that they're feeding you, it's not complex really in any way, though that's not to say that the songs aren't complex. It's just every song is exactly what I said it is. It starts quiet, amazing beat comes in, there's a chorus that's probably really great and catchy, and then the beat goes away, and then it comes back again later. And there's almost no guitars on this album. This is a mostly electronic. This is a trip-hop album, pretty much. I think they're listed as kind of like an electronic trip-hop rock thing. There is one or two songs at the end that have guitar, but like there's some crazy synth basses. And I don't mean like synthwave synth basses. I mean like droney notes, like low, just guttural dubstep beat things without the wob, wob, wob. So like that, and then just like the coolest beat in the world on top of it. I cannot express it any more than just like this album is about the beats. Every single song, you're just sitting there waiting. And I'm not even saying like the parts where there aren't drums in the song aren't good. They're all interesting and different enough that you can separate the songs from one another. And I've told you before, I do not like Chino Moreno's vocals in the Deftones. I do not like the Deftones at all. In fact, I find them to be one of the most annoying bands that I've ever heard that is like immensely popular. I don't know why they're popular or who would like them. I just can't, I don't know. But this fits his vocals. It's ghosty. It's ethereal. It's slow. There's reverb, but not too much of it, but a lot of it.
This sounds like what I want in life.
You want this. This is one of the albums that I was like, should I share this with Chris or not? If I share this with Chris, I think this will make it on his list. But then I was like, I don't know. This is definitely more of a Patrick thing, I think, than a Chris thing. You know, there's like Depeche Mode in this. There's a Portishead in this. There's a lot of things in this that I really like that I don't think you necessarily care for as much.
Sure.
But man, it's just about the beats. And I love saying that because normally working at a recording studio for many years, the joke there was always that someone would call and say, "Hey, do you guys make beats?" And that's what I think of. That's what I think of when someone says beats to me. It's like, "Hey man, you guys make beats?" You know?
That's so good.
And the thing is, that's this album, all those beats those people were asking for, this is where they all went to, and they're phenomenal.
That's so funny.
Not a single one of these songs is disappointing when that beat kicks in. It's almost like a dubstep album where you're waiting for the drop. You know, like the whole song is building for the drop. This is kind of like that, except you're just waiting for the drums to kick in. But the thing is, like, a lot of the songs are at the same tempo. And so you would think that some of the songs could sound repetitive with like the drum beats and stuff, but they're really, really clever and they're very skillful at creating these the drum patterns that you're hearing, and none of them really sound repetitive from song to song, and they all sound unique, but they're all massive. Let me tell you, this album is the most massive album probably that I've heard all year long. Like. Wow. And I think parts of it is it's that thing that we talk about where like there's a lot of things happening in the song, but really none of them are fast or have low frequencies in them. So that when the drums do come in and they're like shockingly fast transients with like all this boomy low end and stuff in them, when the bass comes in usually at the same time, it's like an explosion that's in beat format that continues for the duration of that part of the song. And it's just so epic. Their first album was a lot more trip hoppy. than this album. Their first album was a lot more like this song. Every song was different, but it kind of created like a little atmosphere to it, using guitars and different things and lots of repeating patterns. And then the drums were like cool parts that kind of repeated throughout the song. Whereas this whole album is just like, and I this is the kind of thing where you could use any one of these songs on like TikTok and it'd be like a huge thing. Because once that beat kicks in, it's all about the beat kicking in. And I keep saying that and it makes me feel like I'm losing a little bit of like music cred every time I say that because it's all about the beat. But like really, that's what the album is. It's so phenomenal. The production is phenomenal across the whole album. It's one of those things where like kind of like you were just saying, like you can't believe that the whole album is as good as it is. And that's what this album is. Like the whole thing is so good. And it just has no right to be that good. But the fact that these guys are so great, they're operating at such a high level creatively that it's phenomenal. So that's my number 6
hear it.
By
That's
Crosses.
the one on your list I'm the most excited for so far.
Yeah. Now I want to say real quick, if anyone's unfamiliar, Crosses is a band that you can look up as the word Crosses, but the real name of the band is Three Crosses. So it's this,
I have seen that.
Yes. We talked about them back when their first album came out when we were doing whatever. Because I think that album was on my list that year.
I thought that's what, when you called them Crosses, I was like, I wonder if it's that same thing.
The name of,
I never realized that was Chino, what's his face?
Chino Moreno. Yeah. So, all right, that's my number 6.
All right.
Very excited for you to listen to it.
Number 5. Number 5 is a local band, another band that I have not really any previous engagement with. But they're called The Classic Crime, and their album is called Grim Age. It's 11 songs, 40 minutes, and they are... Do you know who I Fight Dragons is? Have you listened to any of their stuff?
I think you've showed me some of their stuff, maybe, but other than that, I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. It's in the vein with that. It's almost kind of like it's kind of switchfooty and maybe some Ludo-esque elements to it. It's got a slower, kind of not drawn out, but like there's just not a lot of freneticism to it. It's still very like the energy's high, but in like whole notes kind of way.
Yep.
And it's a type of music.
Like, I'm going to throw this out there, and maybe it's totally wrong, but I've always thought that about the band Stained. Right? They always had energy to them, but it was never a frenetic, fast energy.
Yeah, the same kind of gig. I would not ever say that these guys sound like Stained, but that concept applies. And it's just a type of music that I had not realized that it had been so long since I'd heard and that I was missing. Like I heard it and I was like, oh man, this is really refreshing. This is it's just good. It's not especially like novel.
So what is it? What kind of music is it?
I don't know. What is everything I just told you? Is that rock? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. It's rocky. It's some. I mean, they have a couple of songs early on that are. It's not slow either. It has enough energy. It actually kind of falls a little bit in line with the Set It Off album that I was a huge fan of last year.
Okay.
Doesn't quite have the energy and like every song is its own kind of totally different beast that was true on that album, but it's the type of music that I have not heard in a while, and it was like, oh man, yeah, for whatever reason this is really hitting the spot, and I just really liked this album a lot. It was really good, and it's very straightforward for sure. Can I ask,
since you said they're a local band, did you discover them when you were at a show, or did they open for someone?
Okay. No, I've been aware of them passively through someone else for a while, but I've never really listened to their stuff. And then she was like, hey, listen to the new A Classic Crime album. They're great. I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is good. Enjoying it quite a bit.
Are they like nationally known or?
I mean, I had never
Look
heard
how many
of them
listeners
before.
they have on Spotify.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea.
I always like to use that as a metric.
It's a good metric, yeah.
Oh, that is vile. Oh.
I would say ultimately no. It says 63,000 monthly listeners.
Okay,
which is not like
no, that's pretty low. I mean,
yeah, that's pretty low.
Relatively,
all things considered. Like some of their older stuff, like this album of theirs from 2006 called Albatross. Like,
so they've been around for a while.
They've been a while. Yeah, been around for a while. This album, yeah, the 2006 album Albatross has a song. Their highest, most popular song is from that album with like 3.2 million views, which is really not much for something that happened in 2006.
But that's pretty respectable, though.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, excuse me.
And
it
Spotify hasn't been around for 06 either.
I was going to say it wasn't put on Spotify until probably 2014, 15.
Yeah, good point for sure.
Okay, well that sounds awesome. I don't know. Do you think you'd ever get the chance to see them live then?
Oh, probably. I could just
go to their house. Go to their house and ask them to play for you.
Go to their house and be like, hey, you guys got a show coming up? This was the only way I could learn this.
Play for me. Practice right now.
Play for me, yeah. I'll just sit on the porch.
That is always so intriguing to me, the idea of, we don't need to talk about this forever, but the idea of local band.
Uh-huh.
Because that is so dang relative, you know?
And it's so...
And
it's so interesting because having grown up in the Midwest, a local band there means something completely different here.
Yeah.
Like, because it's like, you know, Metallica. If you live in San Francisco, you could say Metallica is a local band.
Right.
And it's like, that's not, you know, it really undersells what's happening. And it's like, there are so many bands from this area. Like Demon Hunter is also a local band. And it's like, well... Does that count? Can you call them that anymore?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think after a certain level of popularity, you're not a local band anymore. Mm-hmm. That's just my definition of it. But like, to me, one of the things that I think about, and it actually makes me mad when I think about this. I think about it quite often.
Good.
So I've been reading and doing a lot of, earlier this week, I was going to film a Kaiser's Orchestra video with my cousin Cody. And we just didn't do it because I haven't been feeling the best. And just busy with other things. And so we decided to put it off for a while. But to get ready for that video, I've been doing a lot of research on Kaiser's Orchestra. And the thing that's so interesting is like, Kaiser's Orchestra is a band that is so small relatively compared to any band from the United States that's huge.
Uh-huh.
But to Kaiser's Orchestra in Norway, they are the biggest band. And they spent the entire, they've spent years doing like hundreds of shows just in Norway in a year.
Yeah.
Norway is the size of Nebraska and has, hey Google, what's the population of Norway?
In 2021, the population of Norway was 5,408,320.
5 million people live in Norway. So you're talking about the biggest band in their country from there playing to a country of 5 million people, hundreds of shows a year, going to towns and cities that are probably less than 50,000 people big.
Yeah.
And this band is huge.
Uh-huh.
There.
What a crazy...
It is so insane to me, right? To think that the metrics are so... Like, if you had a band in the Midwest that played hundreds of shows in the Midwest to 5 million people, they would be considered losers, right? They would be a nothing small band, right?
Yeah.
Because in the United States, we have hundreds of millions of people, most of which live on the coasts in California and New York.
Uh-huh.
And so, like, if to be a successful band in California, you have to be as successful as the, like, probably 50 most successful bands in Norway combined.
Uh-huh.
And it is just insane to me to think of those metrics.
It's crazy to imagine it because it's like, and especially within the confines of a country, like, for so many people, you never leave your country. It's all you know.
Right.
And you're aware of the world around you. And I could go off into a million-hour tangent just about what it must be like to live in a non-America country and have America be the powerhouse of information and influence that it is and have it affect you in ways where you're like, I don't even understand why we're doing this because those people said so.
Right.
Like in the U.S., we have we love our isolationism. And so it's like, what is another country? Never heard of it, said everybody who lives here. And so we make our own rules about ourselves. And that alone is crazy. But just to be like within the confines of your country, and as far as you know, all that ever was. Like, do I know Japan exists? Absolutely. Do I recognize it in a sort of realistic way that I would had I ever been there? No, it is, something that I actually attribute a lot to being in the Midwest is like every other part of the world, all of the most relevant stuff that you would ever hear about or see on TV is like, that is a dream space in another dimension where it's like, I know it exists because things that I like are from there. People live there, all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. But the reality of it ever affecting you is almost non-existent.
Right.
And so it does exist there's like this, I don't really call it anything because I don't have anything that I was going to say, but like the space between, especially because I grew up in Omaha and that's where you're familiar with, there's like, you've got Omaha and then you've got nothing for 8 to 10 hours of driving. And it's just, I consider that to be like a moat, the dried up moat of the Midwest, where it's like there's it's like in Attack on Titan, where it's like you can, what's out there, we know it's there, but we can't go to it. It's not relevant to us. And so to have that same experience from a country perspective when you're in a small country is like, we are huge as a landmass filled with people. We as a band are huge because everybody in this country knows who we are. Millions of people have seen us play. And in the grand scheme of things, no one has ever heard of us do anything.
Isn't that insane?
And it's so hard to put myself in that mindset. It
absolutely is mind-boggling. Mm-hmm. To think about the fact that like the one of like a mediocre band in Chicago probably has more followers, more fans than the highest, grossest selling local artist, or not local artist, like artist in Finland.
Yeah.
Or whatever, and I'm not crapping on any of the music from any of these countries because you can see by my list, like all
it's just the size
music,
of the country.
It's just insane. It boggles my mind that the entire country of England could fit into the state of Nebraska plus 20,000 square miles to go.
Uh-huh. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the whole country of England is 55,000 square miles big, and Nebraska itself is 77,000 square miles. And the amount of culture, the amount of history, the amount of music, the amount of movies, the amount of everything you can name that's come from England, and then you think of what's ever come from Nebraska.
Right.
Like Kool-Aid and Runza.
Yeah.
You're like, nothing.
Runza, L. Ron
relatively.
Hubbard, Marlon Brando, and that's it. Like,
then you think about the idea of there being like, because like, we kind of crap on Nebraska and the Midwest and stuff, but like a city of 1 million people isn't bad. Omaha we have a city of 1 million people in Nebraska, which is actually probably one of the top, 20 biggest cities in the United States. It's just different because like California is just one giant city that just never stops. Mm-hmm. So like, it's hard to say, but like, and it's obviously just everything is so different, but like a city of 1 million people is nothing to sneeze at, really.
Right. That is a real amount of people.
You know what I mean? Like it's 1 million people. And so like, hey, Google, what's the population of Oslo in Norway?
In 2014, the population of Oslo was 634,290.
So the population of the capital of Norway is 630,000.
Wow.
And I don't know if that's the biggest city in Oslo or in Norway.
It's the one I'm familiar with.
I would assume that it is. Mm-hmm. And then there's probably just 100 cities that are 100,000 or not 100. 10 cities that are over 100,000 spread out throughout, whatever. Like, it just, on one hand, it seems unfair. Like, if you're a band, move to Norway and you'll make it big. It seems like it should be like a guaranteed thing. You know what I mean? But it's not. And you can't look at it that way because you have to adjust. Like, I found out from Kaiser's Orchestra that in Norway, I think if you sell 50,000 units of an album, that's their platinum.
Yeah. Wow.
Which in the United States, it's 1 million. You sell 1 million copies and you've got a platinum selling album. But for adjusted for their population, it's 50,000. And a band selling 50,000 copies of an album here, depending on where they're from, could be considered a huge failure. I don't know. All right, your number 5, I believe, is what we're on.
Oh, we're still doing this music thing? What did you have for number 5?
I didn't do number 5. You're going first this time.
My number 5 was Classic Crime. So, and that's where we got to talking about local
okay.
stuff.
So it's
time for your number 5.
My number 5. Okay. Okay. My number 5, The Death of Darkness by the 69 Eyes.
Oh.
This is 10 tracks, 40 minutes. Good, solid length. This is their 14th studio album since their 1992 debut 31 years ago. They are from Finland, which is funny because we just used them as an example in that conversation that I may or may not cut from this video. And this is a band that I think I've brought up and talked maybe to you about in the past. I discovered this band a few years ago because I have known of them for years as a gothic, like rock, gothic band, basically. I heard a few of their songs on soundtracks over the years, and are you familiar with Typo Negative at all? Yeah. Well, so Typo Negative is a band that I don't care for very much. However,
same.
Some of their songs are like really awesome, and the singer sings with this like deep, low voice. And then for 5 minutes, he'll go, it sounds like stupid and crappy, and I hate a majority of what Typo Negative does. Blech. But they have a few songs that are a little bit more accessible where he's singing with this really low bass voice, and it just sounds so gothic-y, right? The music, the keyboards, everything has just like dripping gothic. The few songs that I've heard of 69 Eyes on soundtracks and things have basically been like that, but without all that goofy crap that Typo Negative does. So much more straightforward rock and roll with a goth feel to it. So I knew who they were, and then a few years ago, I found the Nuclear Blast Friday sale for Black Friday, and they had one of their albums on sale for like $3.99. And so I was like, okay, I've heard of this band. I'll get it. Check it out. I got it, and they've been a band now for a long time. These guys are definitely in their upper middle age, and they are just basically now at this point of their career. I've done a tiny bit of digging into what their music was earlier on, and it was a lot more racy, a lot more sort of like sexually themed stuff, and a lot more, I guess, just edgy in general, maybe a little bit heavier. Now, they're just like old dudes that make the cleanest, best, simple rock and roll, just dripping with goth, and it's just fun music, period. And so I have their 3 most recent albums, and their last 2 albums that I got before this one came out this year, they were experimenting, I think, a little bit more. And the singer does have a few different voices he can sing with, unless there's 2 guys in the band that sing, I don't know. But I would say a majority of the songs he sings in this sort of like a bass voice, but then he does have this sort of higher falsetto range that he sings in sometimes as well. And I wasn't like super like, these are masterpiece albums with their 2 previous albums, one of which is called, I think, XX because it's their 20th anniversary album or something. And then one of them is, I don't remember what it's called. But this year, they released an album called The Death of Darkness. It is unabashedly 100% exactly what they are. They're known as the Helsinki Vampires. They walk around dressed like vampires and stuff all the time, even though they're, like I said, 50, 60 years old now. And this album just rocks. I would say of all the albums that I own, this is one of the best rock and roll albums that I have. I do not have a lot of like what I would consider to be like modern rock and roll, but that is absolutely what this is. And then the cool thing about it is I have always loved like goth sounds, anything that if you could attach the word goth to something, that's probably the aspect of that band that I enjoyed the most. The like gothic atmospheres, the goofy like looking hair and all this stuff. Like I love all of that.
Absolutely.
And the piano, the organ, the tone of the guitars, the delays, the like reverb, everything on this album. I think this album is a perfect album.
Oh,
It is 10 perfect songs. You do not need to skip. 2 of the songs are Old West sounding songs. There is guest female vocals. There's fantastic guitar solos in most of the songs. There's 3 choruses every song. The vocals are perfect across the entire album. Every ounce of this album is perfect. And the only reason that I don't say it's like a masterpiece or have this higher on my list is because at the end of the day, it is what it is, and it does what it's doing so fantastically. However, there's nothing about it that's like revolutionary or like it's simple. Like, I feel like if you gave me a guitar, I could probably play through some of these songs, and that is like the lowest bar imaginable. And I definitely couldn't play through it as well as they do, but it's very simple.
yeah. Simple's good though.
Yeah.
Simple is there's so much elegance and simplicity where it's like, look at all of Beyonce's biggest hits. The simplicity of them is
Yes.
what makes them so genius.
And the thing is, these guys have been around forever. They're very mature as artists. They've matured a lot. And so like it takes you can only really do an album like this if you've been around for so long that you're totally comfortable with what you are.
yeah.
And there's like a bit of a tongue-in-cheek to this. Like they sing about blackness and darkness and vampires and whatnot and stuff.
They don't take themselves too seriously.
They absolutely do not. But the thing is, it's just cool and badass. Like at the end of the day. And this album, I believe, is sort of their last album. It's either this. I think their
Sounds
last.
like it's a lot of fun.
Oh, 100%. I'm excited to show you one of the songs from this. The song is called "Call Me Snake," and it is directly a song about escape from LA. I mean, it's 100% like exactly about escape from
That's
LA.
loaded.
Which
That's loaded
which
up.
also makes me like love it because this character of Snake was based on Snake Plissken from
Right.
the Escape from LA.
Escape from New York.
And like the chorus of it is just "Call me Snake, 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 call me Snake," and it's just
That's fantastic.
chugging heavy riffs, great guitar solo, 80s synths. And that's another thing I will say. This album, I think, does have a little bit more 80s influence too. Their last album was a concept album about the 80s. Unless I'm totally wrong, and this album was the concept about the album 80s. I think this album is more rounded, though. And there's songs that are, like I said, there's 2 Old West songs, and they just fit in. You wouldn't think that an Old West song would fit with the goth thing, but it absolutely fits. It's like the vampires went to the Old West, you know? And that's just how the songs
Old
feel.
West Vampires is like, sign me up.
Yeah,
I'm
I
ready
know,
for
right? Like
whatever
make
that
a
is.
movie about it right now and I'll go see it. But it's a solid album, front to back, total fun ride the entire time. It's not super long, doesn't overstay its welcome, although the last song is pretty epic and long. You know, there's a couple like 5.5 minute long songs, but then there's a couple that are less than 3, 3.5. So it's just like, honestly, I think it's a perfect album. Every song is
Great.
enjoyable from front
That's
to back.
great.
And so that's my number 5, The Death of Darkness by the 69 Eyes.
Wonderful. It's my number 4. It's 72 Seasons.
Aha!
You know, I had a lot of should I or should I not put this on here? And then I had a lot of, well, it's definitely going on there because I only have 17 albums to
Sure.
choose from. And it is certainly not worse than many of them. But I'm thrilled to hear how much you've come around on that album.
Oh, yeah. I think if I would have listened to it more throughout the year, it probably would have been on my list.
That's great. Because as we go through all the Metallica videos and stuff, and we get into some of their better sounding work and some of their more classically, amazingly well-written work, stuff like this is like, how much do we care about 72 seasons when Master of Puppets exists, for example?
Right.
And it's like, nobody expects Metallica to reinvent the wheel that they already invented.
Great point.
And, they're old and they're still doing it, which rules. And I love that. I mean, the thing that I liked the most about this album is that they're still doing stuff that you haven't heard them do before. And so much of Metallica is a lot of the same thing. Like, not necessarily in a way that's boring or whatever else, but like we've talked about the 3 eras of Metallica, which I think is a concept that we invented specifically. And
No one else has ever said it.
No one's ever said it. And so it's like you've got the first era plus the third era equals first plus second equals third. That's where we're at now, is the third era, where you've got Death Magnetic, Hardwired, and 72 Seasons are all very much just wonderful little blends of the first 4 albums and then the middle 4 albums, or whatever many. And I'm happy. I'm happy with it. I don't really have any complaints about it. It just, I still think I might like Hardwired better, but I need to listen to this more. And I don't have any complaints about it, other than there are, like, this is an album of 7s and 8s. And, they've got And Justice for All is an album of 9s and 10s. And so it's like, there isn't anything about it where I'm like, yeah, this is no good, I'm skipping this song. They're just not hitting the highs that they used to hit, which is not something that anybody should realistically expect from a band like them. And I'm thrilled. And who knows when we get another album from them. It's been 6 years, almost 7, probably 7 years, I suppose, since Hardwired. And it's like, when you get to be in your early to mid 60s, do you have 7 years in you to wait for another album to come out? Who knows what's going to happen?
I think, and again, I'm the Metallica noob here, so take this with a grain of salt, but I think from everything that I've seen and from what we've talked about, Metallica seems to be pretty happy right now. They're happy with the new album. They seem to be having so much fun touring. I see things posted of them touring just like all the time, having fun on stage and whatever. Awesome. And I feel like it's probably been quite a long time since Metallica was happy in general.
Interesting, yeah.
And, I think with Hardwired, I don't know of any, you can say from Black Album to Hardwired, every album was tainted by different things.
Oh, that is the rockiest period of
any band ever.
Are they good? Are they not? Are they coked up?
What kind of band are they going to be now?
Yeah,
drug issues, exactly. All sorts of things. And I don't know what happened. I don't know with Hardwired if there was anything that prevented them from being happy-go-lucky dudes, but it really seems like with 72 Seasons, they are just embracing being Metallica and having a good time. And that would lead me to believe that they will happily go into the studio and record more music sooner rather than later.
I think I've heard James say, and I can't quote this because I don't know if it's super true, but it seems to me like they will make music until they are no longer physically able
I saw an interview where they said that. We will make music until we die. So, So I just feel like, again, this is the Metallica noob over here. If they truly,
that fresh set of eyes means as much as anything else.
If they truly are having fun now, and nobody's just crapping on them and sending them death threats every day because whatever they decided to write a slow song,
yes,
if you're so happy, it just seems like they're happy. I see videos every day go through my feed of Lars makes Rob chuckle or something on stage when or Rob makes Lars. Or Rob makes James lose his crap during a solo because he does some stupid line on the bass or something. When you see those kind of things, I feel like it just lends to this picture of them having fun and just being dudes that are having fun. And that tells me that they would be much more willing to go in the studio and make new music. But we also have to remember, too, that we just got a new album from them and we have to be patient.
Yes.
You know, so like you have,
I mean,
I don't know.
I wasn't sure if we were getting anything after Hardwired. You know, it's been 7 years.
Yeah.
So I'm
now
thrilled.
COVID really like threw a wrench into that. Like they could have
Yes, of
released an
course.
album 4 or 5 years ago, but
Yeah, and it's honestly, it's vile to think about the fact that since Hardwired, that 72 Seasons was from 2020. So it's like
ooh,
that 2020 is the halfway point between these two albums, and I
Right.
hate that fact.
Right.
It's I hate it. But
now can we
you're
talk?
absolutely right.
Can we talk just a sec about the album, because
Yes.
I want to talk about the songs a little bit, because I think now, having heard Metallica's entire catalog, I definitely think I would think differently about 72 Seasons had I heard it in chronological order.
I wonder about that a lot.
I think I would have liked it a lot more. But also, I think hearing it before Hardwired really deadened my appreciation for Hardwired.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I would have loved Hardwired a lot
makes
more
sense.
had I not heard 72 Seasons. And maybe the same could be said for Death Magnetic, though I think Death Magnetic is quite a bit different from Hardwired and
It is.
72 Seasons. Like, I kind of put Hardwired and 72 Seasons together. I think that
It's interesting because it is. I think that Death Magnetic is like, so you've got that storm from Load, Reload, Garage, tumultuousness, Saint Anger, and then like Saint Anger is the lowest point of Metallica's career from the perspective of fans. And I would say the lowest point of their career is probably like earlier than that, probably like Load, Reload era in terms of what I know about
their personal
drugs and stuff,
Yeah.
their personal life. But I really feel like Death Magnetic had an agenda where it had to prove to people that they could still do it after what happened with Saint Anger.
But remember, don't forget the compression debacle, because
Right, which is a whole
I
mess.
keep forgetting about that, and then when I remember it, it pisses me off. Because it's like,
Yeah.
come on, you stupid band, just come on.
Right. It's like you're trying to prove that you can still be Metallica, and you come up with this amateur mess of compression into a sausage of sound, like just a brick.
Yeah,
And so it's like-
absolutely unacceptable. But okay, sorry, hold on. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off because I
ahead.
want to talk about the songs on 72 Seasons.
Right. Well, I mean, my point
Okay.
is leading into what you're going to say.
Okay, go ahead.
So I feel like, but you've got your Saint Anger is the peak of the low, and then they're climbing out. You've got good songs on Death Magnetic in a way that sounds awful, but for some reason, but the songs are there. And so now you're up over the hump. They have cleared the storm. And Hardwired, as far as I can tell from the atmosphere of the world around me, finally was able to be made without any real expectations. That they finally got to make an album that is like, okay, all of this mess of every single thing that's happened before has been washed away. People either like us or they don't. Let's just make music again. And that this is a continuation of that.
Yes. And they're able to enjoy the process.
Yes.
Because they knew that they could do it last time and that people were happy with it. Mm-hmm. So what I wanted to say was, I think that for a majority of Metallica's career, they were intentionally writing not catchy songs.
Interesting.
So think about it. Master of Puppets. Fantastic song, classic song, not the kind of song you sing along with. Really.
You shout.
Right, but I just mean like, yes, master, but like that's, I think you know what I mean. And you know, Chris always talks about like, it sounds like James is starting halfway through the verse. And we talk about the anti-chorus.
The anti-chorus. I've been
Right.
thinking about that a lot lately because that's
Right.
news to me in terms of what they do, but it's so true.
But to me, they especially earlier on in their career, they were still being so influenced by the punk music that I think some of them grew up with, that they were intentionally not writing catchy sing-along songs.
Okay, sure.
Until-
they've got the prowess to make
Right.
that happen.
Until Black Album, when
Yep.
they were like, we're selling out completely. Exit light, right? Everyone in the whole stadium can sing that.
Mm-hmm.
The whole album full of songs that you can sing along with. Every song, for the most part. Even "Don't Try It On Me," like, and even some of the guitar parts, right? Guitar parts you can kind of remember as the layperson, I mean, Chris
Legendary.
Schoenberg knows all the guitar riffs to every Metallica song in a way I never will because I'm not technical like that. But
Right.
then I think about, Load and Reload, and there's definitely some catchy stuff there. However, there's also some like parts that drag on, feel kind of sluggish, and they're not necessarily sing-alongy songs. I listened to almost the entirety of 72 Seasons over the last 2 days. I can sing parts of every song on the album.
Nice.
And it absolutely shocks me. Even like "Screaming Suicide," like the guitar part stands out to me. Like, "If Darkness Had a Son, Here I Am," like, "Misery, She Haunts Me," like, almost
That's
every song is catchy.
Yeah.
It's got a catchy vocal part. There's memorable guitar parts. And I know a lot of people will say, like, "Spit Out the Bone," really memorable guitar part. Yes, I guess to some degree, because it's like, no, that is special because of what it is and what the like old energy that it's kind of recapturing. But like, I can't remember any part of that song other than the fact that it was fast and exciting. But I mean, I remember parts of every single song on 72 Seasons, and I do not think there's any other Metallica album other than the Black Album that I could say the same thing for. And I have only heard 72 Seasons in its entirety, I would say maybe twice.
Sure. Okay.
And that tells me
great.
how good the writing is, how accessible it is, and how gosh darn catchy it is. And I love that.
Yeah.
I want to be able to sing along with the songs.
I think people hate on catchiness significantly more than they should.
100%, especially in the metal community.
Yes. Because catchy songs mean that normal people will also potentially like a thing. And to hate on catchiness is to gatekeep, and I do not support gatekeeping. I think everybody should love everything.
I've said it so many times before, and I always kind of apologize, when we talk about this stuff, but I'm always like, oh, it's really catchy. Not that I have to have everything be catchy. But the older I get, the more I'm like, I want to listen to a catchy song. It doesn't have to be catchy.
Like, the concept of catchiness is a structure that is scientifically engineered for enjoyment. Like, catchiness is enjoyment. Like, you can't sure, say what you will about songs that are catchy that you hate and that you hate it when it gets stuck in your head, but that's a different problem.
Even saying it that way, though, I don't think is right. Because it's not always necessarily engineered for you to like it.
No, I don't mean it that way.
Right.
I just mean like catchiness by definition is enjoyment, effectively.
Right. And I feel like universally enjoyed.
Yeah.
And so like, that's why I think if I listened to this album more, it would be on my list, because at the end of the day, if I can put on an album and feel like it's familiar and sing along with it, that goes such a long way with me to be able to enjoy it overall. And I think it's going to be my one or two, I don't think one, but it's going to be my like 2 or 3 favorite Metallica album when we get to those lists. I just absolutely think it's so well written and catchy and really impressive in those regards. And that is not, having heard the whole Metallica album discography, that is not what they were going for a vast majority of every song they've recorded up to this point. They were going for something that wasn't those things. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. And I was going to say, I don't think that there are any bad Metallica albums. I think that there are not any perfect Metallica albums. I would say Injustice for All is the closest to a perfect album from them in my mind. But realistically speaking, Black Album is closer to a perfect album.
Except those 5 songs that fade out like...
Right. And the only thing that's keeping Justice from being perfect in my life is the instrumental track. Because it's like, as much as I enjoy it, as much as I respect it, it's going to be a skip. Like, it's work. It's more work because it doesn't have anything that even resembles what you're talking about. Like,
Right.
where they are still catchy... This thing just went black on me again. Where they are still catchy, and you know, in all of their other songs, like, they are not devoid of catchiness in their older music. But you can hear so much Black Album starting to flower in Injustice for All, and then you get to the part where it's like, well, Black is just all catchy all the time. It's all memorable hooks and riffs, and Justice has some of that, and so it's like the instrumental track. It's just like, there's a reason they don't do that anymore, because it doesn't fit what they do.
Okay, so let's move on. You got disconnected there, whatever. Usually we've been using that as the cue to move on. We just talked about Metallica for like 40 minutes, so hopefully Metallica fans that are watching this get maybe not 40 minutes, good 20 minutes for sure.
There was an instrumental track on Death Magnetic, but I attribute that to the expectation that was placed on that album to be a certain thing.
Right, and that was what I was going to say. You don't have to make a 7-minute instrumental track either. You can make a 2-minute instrumental track that leads into something, and that's fine too. All right, so we are on to my number 4.
Yes.
My number 4 is probably the album that we talked about the most here on my channel.
That's great.
I have it right here in vinyl format.
Oh boy.
We talked about it so much. It is Lies by the band Lies. And
I'm glad.
it is 12 tracks, 57 good minutes.
Solid.
It is a debut album by this band. And I looked, they are right now, as of recording this, they average 2,200 listeners a month on Spotify. So they are nobodies with a nothing following, except for me. I love them.
That's awesome, though. It's a great feeling. It's like, I want them to be more popular so that they can keep doing what they're doing, but also only for me.
Yeah, I have 2 other videos here on my channel going through and talking about. I showed you and I showed Cody the first track on this album, which is called Blemishes, which was my song of the year until Grace Potter released her album, and the incredible song Lady Vagabond, which made me cry. All of this is in videos on my channel here. So for those of you who don't know, Lies is an album that is a audio engineer's dream. It is full of beautifully crafted soundscapes, wonderfully recorded strings, guitar, drums.
It would be the
vocals.
best sounding album of the year if Peter Gabriel had just stayed home.
Right, and the Ruin Brothers didn't record their 10 Paces album either. But it's definitely one of the albums we talked about throughout the year as being like one of the highest quality recordings. I think that I have not been able to listen to this album from front to back all the way through because it's like too much. It's too meaty. And there's some albums that I absolutely adore that I feel that are like that. Like, I cannot listen to Pendulum's album Immersion all the way through, and I consider that album to be the third best number 3 best albums of the decade in my decade video. That was my number 3, Pendulum's album Immersion.
That's the one with
the 2 naked people on the front swimming.
There's one. The Island, is that one of the tracks? It's like a 2-part?
The Island Part 1, Part 2.
Fantastic.
It's also got the song Self vs. Self featuring In Flames, which is one of the greatest songs of all time. Anyway, I consider that to be one of the greatest albums of all time. But I can't listen to that album all the way through because it's just too much. And this album is like that. There's a consistency across the whole thing that I would say would make it a little fatiguing to try to listen to the whole thing, or that's how I feel about it at least. However, I don't necessarily say that in a bad way, because every song does still feel different. the fact that it was made for probably significantly less than everything else on my list. And like I said, they're like they're an unknown band pretty much.
But they are made of people who've been in a lot of bands for 20 plus years.
The brothers Canellis, who were in American Football and Owen and a few other bands that are all on this specific record label with a group of guys that have floated around and been pretty popular. I think here and there with different styles of music, but this is the first project that I'm familiar with from these guys. And it's just so good. It's hard for me to explain. If you haven't heard this album at all, which unless the only way you probably would have if you've been watching my videos earlier this year talking about it, I highly recommend looking up the first song on this album called Blemishes. I think it's a perfect song. Although actually that's really funny too, because I listened to this song probably 60 times before I realized that there's only a chorus twice. I just assumed it was structured the way I love my music structured, but it's not. There's only a chorus done twice. But it's long enough and it fulfills my satisfaction meter in terms of individual song enough that I don't, feel like it's short. But I give that song a listen. You'll get the whole breadth of the album that way. When I showed it to you, that moment in the chorus where the acoustic guitars and the strings come in during the chorus, and you're just like, how? How can this get this big? How can this feel this big?
How can so much be happening and I don't lose any of it? It's masterful.
And it just gets bigger. The whole album is like that. The last track is phenomenal as well. It's this really cool instrumental song that builds really nicely, and they have these like samples of like someone giving a speech, and it's just a really cool album from front to back. There's little surprises along the way in each song that make each song a little different. I always talk about musical sprinkles. There's all sorts of really good ones throughout the whole album. So yeah, I don't have I have multiple videos on my channel talking about this album. So go look those up if that sounds intriguing. And if nothing else, just listen to their song Blemishes by Lies. This is the band Lies with their album Lies. And that's my number 4.
Very good. Very good. Now, we're really getting into the meat here. We're going to talk about some stuff that we've talked about before and a couple of things that we've never talked about on here. Number 3 is Zig.
Aha! I knew it. I knew it was going to be on your list, and I knew it was going to be high. You keep mentioning every time we record a video, God, I wish I would have. I love that Poppy album more now than I did when we recorded the video.
And I thought so many times about how much I would love to go back and like give a completely different, I don't think I was as negative as I'm worried that I was.
Yeah, we weren't that bad.
Yeah, but I love this album. There is so much happening that I love. The catchiness. There's so many different songs where it's like, this is just immediately hooked in. Like ones and zeros.
What's the track listing and the runtime?
That is 11 songs, 30 minutes. So it just makes the cut.
Okay.
Just barely. But I love it. I love it. She's never done this style before. It fits right in with what she does. It is super in line. Like there's some stuff on here that's very lights. There's some stuff that's very Melanie Martinez. It's super catchy. I love it. It has really, really grown on me. I've listened to it 100 times since we did that video.
And we recently reacted to this whole album, so you can check that out here on the channel. And we also reacted to her single, Church Outfit, earlier in the year as well.
Yes. And then a cover that she did.
A Kitty cover. So yeah.
Which song was that?
I don't remember. It was just a song from
the
Kitty band Kitty. Yeah. I don't have too much else to say about it. I haven't listened to it since we did the reaction, and to be honest, I probably will never listen to it again.
That's a shame. You should.
Not because I don't think that I hated it that much or anything. No part of it really impressed me. So
bummer.
And I did listen to it a second time when I edited the video, so I will say that.
All right.
And I did notice a couple of things about it that impressed me more than I thought, and I also noticed a few things where I was like, this is worse than I thought it was when we were listening to it at the time. So,
all right.
Yeah, because you would say something like, oh, there hasn't been too many, like, whatever, the repeating parts or whatever. And then one of the songs is just, like, literally the same thing, or whatever. It doesn't matter. But, like, yeah, it wasn't an album that impressed me, and we'll see. Maybe once Poppy's career is done in 25 years and we look back on her whole discography, Zig will be its thing. But I'm still sitting here waiting for Zag. And maybe Zag will make me enjoy Zig more.
I would kill for Zag. I'd kill for Zag.
Well, we'll see about next year. All right. Does that mean we're on my number 2? Number 3.
We are.
My number 3. So my number 3, we've mentioned it several times already. My number 3 is 10 Paces by the Ruin Brothers.
Nice.
I can't, this album, I talked about it so much at the beginning of the year. And I did that thing that I did with Lies where I made you listen to a few songs with me. Did we do that in a video? Or did I do that with you at all? Maybe I did it. I did it with my cousin Cody.
I feel like we did it. We did. I don't think we recorded it. You might have showed me after we recorded something. I think I just showed you after we recorded something. And I might have done the same thing with Cody, but I think I recorded the one with Cody. I can't remember. But in any case, we talked about it multiple times. Mm-hmm. This is an album that I was laying in bed at night and I put it on to just see what it was like. And it blew my mind so much I had to text you about it, I think. It was one of those albums. Unless not, because I might have kept it close to the vest or to the chest and then showed it to you. But anyway, this is 10 tracks, 32 minutes, so it's small. This band is from England. They are not a huge band. They have a website you can go to where they are touring the United States currently, just kind of along the East Coast, and I think into Texas. Definitely like country western places. Yeah, makes sense.
They have no wiki page at all.
Interesting.
I checked their followers, and I think that they have 75,000 plays per month or something like that.
Okay.
On Spotify. This is a Old West sounding album. And it's by these two English dudes. And the audio quality is as high as it can be.
It is.
That's what we talked
pristine.
about when we talked about it.
It is one of the top 3 best sounding albums of the year.
Of the year, for sure. I think that it is some of the best songwriting of the year, easily. I think my favorite lyrics of the year are on this album.
Ooh.
I think that I should have done this. Well, I'm not even going to bother with it because it'll take too much time. I think the lyrics in their songs are just perfect. Just so perfect. They really know how to capture the old-timey feel with what they're saying, but at the same time, it feels like a young, modern person delivering it.
Okay.
You know, like they wouldn't be afraid to reference something modern, like, I don't know, depression medication or something like that, but still have it feel like it's coming from the Old West, you know?
I like it. I like that.
They are not afraid to use electronic stuff in their music. Some of the songs are based on crazy electronic sounds. Their older albums, this is their third album. Their very first album, it was known, they had a song called All My Shades of Blue. It was a very big song for them. But they were known for, they would took a theremin on tour with them. So they would tour with a theremin and do these like theremin parts. So it kind of had this like Old West sci-fi thing going on. And they have a little bit of that in this album, but for the most part, I'd say it sticks to this sort of Old West sounding stuff. And it's Old West in a bit of a different way than, for example, that Lord Huron album that was my number 3 2 years ago. That is like just, in my opinion, the greatest produced album I've ever heard in terms of getting obtaining that old timey sound.
Yes, unbelievable.
There's nothing like it ever. There never will be again. That's a masterpiece album, minus the 17-minute baloney track at the end of it, where it's just like whisper, like sand or some crap to pad out the album. So go get out of here with that. But we've talked about that before. This album, I didn't listen to it for most of the year. Like I was really high on it at the beginning of the year, and then I kind of just set it to the side for the whole year. And the other day I put it on when I was driving, and I was like, this song's on this album? Because when I first discovered this band, I downloaded I downloaded all 3 of their albums, put them on CDs, and I listened to all 3 of them quite a bit. Their second album kind of sucks, so just kind of forget that one. But the first one and this third one, just so good. But when I was listening to this over the last couple of weeks, I was like, oh, this song is on this album, and this song, and this song, and this song, and this song. Like, talk about banger after banger after banger. This song has like 5 perfect songs in a row. Wow. I don't think there's any miss on this album at all. I think there's maybe like 2 songs that I would say are just slightly like instead of being like a 9.5, is like an 8.5.
Okay.
Everything else is like 10 or 9.5. And I say that understanding 10. Like it's really good. I don't know how else to say it other than that. It's really good. So catchy.
I need to listen to it more, and I feel like it would probably be on my list if I had listened to it more.
I think it would. You even mentioned that earlier. You said, I think that this album might be on my list if I listened to it more. I think it would have. They have these cool, like, there's like, it's such a good mix of styles that they're doing. Mm-hmm. Like, there's like 3 straight up old-timey Old West songs. And those 3 are all really great. Like Turning Silver to Gold is a good one. I can't remember the names of all the songs or whatever. That track 2, when I was listening to that, remember that's the song where the vocals in the chorus are like spread wide and it's very weird.
Yes.
It's weird and unsettling almost. That's the song with my favorite lyrics. I think the verse lyrics in that song are just so clever and witty and well written, and the rhymes are perfect, and it's so great. That's the well, whatever. I'm not going to try to sing it because I'm not familiar enough with the songs to like get it right. But
and it wouldn't do anything for me anyway. But
right.
I remember specifically the like I have an association with that album and having those super widespread vocals on that one particular song.
Yeah, and it's just that one song. So that's something unique to that song. Mm-hmm. And it's just that one part too. So yeah, just a really unique album coming from a surprising place for the style of music that it is. And what could very easily be like a novelty, but done so well, I think it's actually just it's very special rather than being novel.
Which I think is something you could easily say about that Lord Huron album as well.
Oh, easily.
That has novelty painted all over it, but it's so well executed that it's not anymore. It's
well, we need to wait and see what Lord Huron does next.
Yes.
Because we'll wait and see. Like I feel like every Ruin Brothers album should probably sound like this moving forward, just with like different songwriting. Especially if their thing now is going to be like touring the United States as like a country band, type thing. Like an old-timey band. But Lord Huron, they could make a grunge album next, and it would probably fit in with their catalog. So who knows? I think that was a special thing we got. So anyway, that was my number 3, 10 Paces by Ruin Brothers.
Excellent. R-U-E-N. I said R-U-E-N instead of the general R-U-I-N.
Yes.
In case anybody's searching for them.
R-U-E-N Brothers. And they're not super easy to find everywhere either. Mm-hmm. I was looking them up on Discogs, and they're there, but like I said, they have no wiki page. None of their albums have a wiki page. There's literally no mention of them on Wikipedia at all. So,
all right. So now, for the second time in 2 years. Is that true? I just looked at this to bring this up, and now I've ruined it. In my top 12 for 2021, this artist existed, and she's back for my number 2 spot. Ash Nico.
Oh, okay. All right.
Ash Nico is here with the album that I've been chewing through my own teeth, waiting for this album, because I knew it was like the singles that we were getting throughout the year were just fire, and man, it is so good. It is not often you build up a certain level of hype, and then you get hit with the thing that's just as good as you wanted it to be.
Oh no, that's very rare.
It's so good. The last time something really hit me with that was the movie Gravity. I thought for sure it couldn't be as good as I had decided it was going to be, and it messed me up. It showed me what good actually looked like.
That's great.
This album is called Weed Killer. It is 13 songs, 33 minutes, which is awfully short.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Every song is under 3 minutes except the last one. But something that we talked about a little bit on the Poppy album was a certain level of efficiency in songwriting, where it's like so many of these songs are like 2.5 minutes, and you almost don't notice because it's just really dense with so much going on. You still get a couple of choruses at least, It's so much fun, and it sounds incredible. It is one of the best sounding albums that I've heard all year. It had
That's
like, every
awesome.
single complaint that we've had about highs being missing from mixes, she's got them all. She took them from everybody else.
Nice.
And they're in there, and there's so much space, and it's huge, and the dual vocals, and just the attitude and everything else. It is so much fun, this album. And I think that you should listen to it.
Now, if I remember correctly, last time she was on your list, you gave me the song to put in underneath, and I had to edit out a lot of swear words.
Yeah, you basically had to just post the instrumental version.
So is this the same, following the same?
Yeah, that is 100% her style. She's very intense.
I can't really. Is it like rap music? I mean, I think I kind of remember.
It is. I think trap is
that's
a
right.
good way to describe what she does. But there's so much aggression in the way that she presents it, and the sound of her voice, the particular timbre that she has unique to her, it's so satisfying to hear. I really love it a lot. And there's some of these songs, like we've got explicit tags on 6 of 13 songs. So it's not
too bad.
Significantly less than I would have actually expected even just myself. So,
and like I always say, like, if you're going to swear, like Cleet always said, if you're going to be a grizzly, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly.
Yeah, if you're going to do something wrong, do it right.
Yeah, so go for it. But the fact that there's several songs or a majority of the songs that don't, that's great.
Yeah, and she's got some slower jams on here that are different than stuff that she's done before.
A lot of guest artists?
Only a couple.
Okay.
There's Daniela Lalita, don't know who that is, and Ethel Kane are the only two that are listed as featuring artists. Everything else is still just her.
Okay, so not a lot of guest, like, lyricists or anything, vocal, like rappers or anything?
Nope, just her.
Okay.
And
I can respect that, because in the rap, like, I mean, I'm not familiar with her, but like, it's pretty common to have lots of collaborations in the like hip hop rap genre. So
yeah, and
that's cool.
My next album is very heavy on that, but this one, no, it's pretty much just her. And like I said, there's some slower stuff on here. The last song is I would say almost a ballad. It's the longest, like 4:15, and it has a collaborative. There's another artist in there somewhere, but even the slow stuff is so good. She just sounds great.
Yeah,
she's getting bigger. Like her YouTube, well, according to Spotify, she's enormous. Her monthly listeners is 5.5 million, so she's not small.
Right. Okay, that's pretty awesome.
Her most popular song has 480 million plays, and that's from her 2021 album. So she's definitely not somebody nobody knows about, but she could still stand to be bigger. She's so good. Everybody should love her.
That's awesome.
Her music.
Yep, and someone that was a returning artist, something you've been waiting for.
So yeah, one of the few new albums, and we didn't really talk too much about this so far in the list, but like that Melmar album was pretty disappointing, and there was a couple of different albums that I got this year that were just they just didn't live up to what I really wanted them to be, and I know that you had that problem big time with several things.
Yeah.
We listened to several of the albums that you were excited for, and boy, oh boy, what a shame they were.
Yeah, I do have my list of disappointing albums of the year.
Good.
I was going to just let it go, but since you brought it up, here's my list. The most disappointing album I've ever reacted to. Just, atrocious. July Talk, I think I've given up on them as a band.
Really?
VNV Nation, super disappointing. You and I are big VNV Nation big VNV Nation fans.
Yeah.
And this is the only album I've ever heard that has too much high frequency and not enough lows. Normally it's the exact opposite of that, but this is like unlistenable, which is really disappointing.
I'll have to check that out.
Well, beware.
Just for, archival purposes.
For sure. And then I have Poppy listed just because I was disappointed with that album. I really liked her last two albums. And this is not what I wanted from her, but we talked about it so much in the video. I appreciate her trying different things, and we'll see if Zag ever comes out. And then the last album that was disappointing to me, I have to mention because it is Scar Symmetries, The Singularity Phase 2 Xenotaph. We've been waiting for over a decade for this album, and it finally came out, and it had the problem that I talk about all the time with not enough high frequencies, right? It was all low frequencies.
That was a mud fest.
Right? And so I burned myself a copy of this album after I boosted the high frequencies. And if that version had been released, this would probably be in my top 6 favorite albums of the year. I've listened to it so much over the course of the year. It's a phenomenal album. It's probably their best album they've released since Christian Alveston left them, so their best album in their last 4 albums. And it would be in my top 6 for sure if only they had officially released a version with high frequencies in it.
If only it didn't sound like garbage.
All I did was add a high frequency shelf, boosting the high frequencies, bounce every song separately, burn it onto a CD, and it is 100% passable. So all the frequencies were there. The mastering engineer just decided to get rid of them for whatever reason.
Wow.
I'm assuming he was mastering for earbuds. So just so disappointing because it would have been on my list. It's that good. But hey, I have a good sounding version of the album. I can listen to it all the time, but that doesn't excuse it, and it's not an official release.
There's 2 EPs by a band called The Spill Canvas. And years and years ago, I combined them.
Oh.
Myself. And I went through and I did everything. I turned it into I gave it its own name. That was a combination of the 2 EP names. And then I set the track list up, and then I edited the metadata, and I went all the way into the grits of this, and I turned it into its own album. And it's awesome. And I will never listen to those 2 EPs separate ever again because that album is too good the way that it is.
I love it. I love that you did that. That's great.
But yeah, in a year of disappointments,
Yeah.
Ashniko is the opposite. She brought fire.
Love it. All right, my number 2. This is probably what I'm most excited to show you when we sit and listen. I've talked about this band before. I have been waiting for years for this band to make this album. An album that is accessible, an album that has catchy songs, an album that has songs structured mostly the way I want them to, and not filled with a whole bunch of weird, abstract fluff between tracks. So this, my number 2, is A Kiss for the Whole World by Enter Shikari.
Oh.
And this, like I just said, I have been waiting for them. I didn't think they'd ever do it because they're very experimental. This is a straightforward Enter Shikari album, something I did not think we would ever get. There's 12 tracks, only 34 minutes long.
Oh.
However, because Enter Shikari is so bonkers, it's a full 34 minutes. and actually one of the tracks, if not 2, actually 2 of them are short instrumental songs that are continuing the theme of the song that came before it, but remixing it, reversing it. One of them is a string interlude thing that comes after a song that's mostly strings. So there are some baloney intermission tracks, but I think I counted and there's 9, I think there's 9 full-length songs, and those 9 songs are each individually fire. There is so much to latch onto here. Are you familiar with Enter Shikari really at all?
I know that we've talked about them before in the past. I know that they've come up in my life in other ways. Since any of that, I don't really listen to them, but I am aware of their existence for sure.
So I'm looking at my notes here. 12 tracks, 34 minutes. I just found out this morning when I was filling out this doc that there is a deluxe iTunes version that has 2 bonus tracks on it. And I was really disappointed when I found that out because I'm like, well, dang it, because this is actually one of the albums I bought on CD. And that's actually a funny story because I went to the CD store in Lincoln that I know of. Really awesome store that still primarily only sells CDs. And I was talking to the guy there, and I asked him if he had a copy of this album or if he could order it, because I was just curious, and I hadn't looked it up on Amazon or anything at this point. And he told me that they did not make a version of this album on CD.
Bummer.
And so then, less than an hour later, we went to the mall in Lincoln.
You found one?
And I was at this weird store that had a ton of used CDs and like a handful of new CDs in it. And I was flipping through, and by God, there's a copy of this album there, brand new, on CD. And I'm like, what on earth is this? So I had to buy it. I bought it for like $15.99, which is a lot. And so I do have the CD version of this. But when I found out about the iTunes Deluxe Edition, the 2 bonus tracks were released as singles last year. And they are both interesting songs, and I listened to them both this morning in their entirety. And I do like them, and the album would be made better with them on it. Mm-hmm. However, I'm just talking about the regular version of this album. So, Enter Shikari is a band that has, earlier on in their career, they have a ton of like punk vibes. And you mix that with the most amazing electronics ever in music. I think some of the coolest electronic parts I've ever heard in music are in some Enter Shikari songs. But they are such an interesting band because a lot of the times it feels like they try to do the opposite of what you expect them to do. Kind of like what you were talking about earlier with the Grandson album, where you're listening to a song and they go to the place that you want them to go and it's so satisfying. I feel like a lot of Enter Shikari's career has been, nope, we're not doing what you think we're doing.
Yeah.
And that can be within a single song. Like the song can start and it's the most amazing melody you've ever heard. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's piano. It's like Peter Gabriel. And then, nope, it's avant-garde metal in 7/8 time with whatever. And then all of a sudden the song is a drum and bass song. And that's one track. And then the next track, you have no idea what to expect. And so they've had a lot of, you just don't know what to expect. And then they released their album called The Spark, which is 2 albums ago. Mm-hmm. And that album was made using only 80s vintage synth gear. And that album sounds like there's like 3, what I would consider like 3 normal songs on it. And those 3 normal songs are total fire. So cool. Like 3 of the most coolest songs I've ever heard. And then there's like 7 tracks of like weird stuff. Then the next album is this really weird album full of all these like short songs mixed with longer songs where the featured instrument is a string quartet. And so it's recorded super well. All of this is recorded super well. But their last album was too much for me. I was like, I love strings, you know that. But to have like these little 40-second tracks, it's almost like they made a whole, you have to think of their last album as a single piece of music from front to back, kind of like that Pink Floyd album, but like cut into 13 or however many tracks are on that album, and it just wasn't for me. Then they released this album this year, A Kiss for the Whole World. Every song is an individual song. Every song has catchy vocals, a structure with a chorus. They always come back to the chorus at the end. Most of the songs have 3 choruses. The bridge is really cool. The electronic elements are amazing. The heavy parts sound heavy as all get out. A vast majority of the album is not heavy at all. It's shockingly happy sounding. This whole album sounds playful as crap. There's 2 songs that just like blow my mind with sound effects and just like being fun. There's one song that has this like sweet beat, and it's this like such a satisfying beat when it comes in, but they only do it for like 2 measures at a time, twice in the whole song. So it's like they're really tempting you. They're really teasing you with the coolest part of this song that they obviously know is the coolest part of this song, but it's only like 2 measures and that's all you get.
That's what Protest the Hero does that too.
Yeah, can be really frustrating, but then you're like, you know what? I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And then like,
I agree.
That song is the one that goes into a song that's just strings, kind of doing the motif of that electronic song. There's one song, the longest song on this album is a song with just strings and the singer singing. However, that's the song where he chooses to do the most intense vocals. So that's the song that has screaming on it, even though it's just strings and him singing. So that's the kind of thing that they do. The quality of the recording couldn't possibly be higher. It's super weird. There's 2 songs about octopuses at the end, part 1 and 2. And it's just happy. It's fun. It's heavy, really well recorded, super catchy. I can sing along with every single song. It's fantastic. And that's why it's my number 2.
I want to listen to it. The last time I heard something from them, I think it might have been Spark, but there was something about it that didn't quite fit for me, and it didn't stick. But
very
I would love
prominent
to hear that.
English accent when singing.
That's fine.
Which
I can
I
do
know
that.
can throw some people off, but I know that doesn't bother you as much, but that's definitely something.
All right. So that was your number 2? Mm-hmm. Okay, well then guess what? It's time. My number 1 album, 15 songs, 60 minutes, out of the UK, is Unicorn by Gunship.
Gunship. Have you mentioned them to me?
Maybe in passing a little bit. They have had a really interesting place in my world by virtue of putting out a bunch of random songs. I think they may have an album previous to this in some capacity. Yeah, they've got a 2015 album, which is Tech Noir is I think their biggest song. They did it with John Carpenter. And
That's a
Carpenter
cool
Brut.
album cover, by the way. I'm looking at it right now.
Unicorn?
Doesn't look familiar to me at all. But yeah, the Unicorn.
So
yeah.
good. They have,
Okay.
and they have 2 albums. 2015 album, Gunship, and then 2018 Dark All Day. I haven't really Gunship for me is a band that it's like, I'm gonna do some work and I want synthwave, so I'm gonna go to Gunship and hit shuffle. And that has more or less been their existence in my life up to this point.
Vocals?
Yes, but not always.
Okay.
Some vocals, but also mostly not, I would say, generally speaking.
That's sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. What are you going to say?
I was just going to say that's my problem with most synthwave bands.
Yes.
Is I want vocals in every song. Maybe I'll give you 1 or 2 instrumentals, but since most synthwave songs sound exactly like every other synthwave song, I need vocals to change up the song. So
Absolutely. Carpenter Brut is the singular exception to synthwave in a way that sounds like nobody else. But for the most part, synthwave, all the different synthwave artists, as great as they are, very much sound like synthwave. And Gunship has changed everything. They have changed everything. They've put out a proper album. Every song on this album, all 15 songs, have vocals. And they have a huge number of collaborations.
Oh, that's awesome.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 14 songs. So half the album has collabs. And I think probably my favorite song of the year is track number 3, Empress of the Damned, which is Gunship, Tim Capello, and Lights on vocals.
Really? Okay.
Yes. And it is fire. It is white hot excellence. This whole album is just, they decided, all right, we're going to quit farting around in ethereal purple sunsets and we're going to make music. And they have brought the heat. There is a second, so one of their most popular songs is Tech Noir, which they did, and then they had a Carpenter Brut remix that I prefer to the original. The original's kind of slow. I would say mostly I heard the Carpenter Brut version first, and it is so good that the original seemed kind of vanilla in comparison.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got Tech Noir 2 is on this album, and it starts off very much the same. The John Carpenter bit is a different clip, and it's where the first one is very dystopian and hopeless in terms of his little monologue, this one is the opposite of that. and then like it'll do that little bit.
Hold
and
on, you said John Carpenter? Did you mean John
Yeah.
Carpenter or Carpenter Brute?
John Carpenter.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
And so the first part of the song falls right in line with the original Tech Noir, and then the first chorus drops into this weird kind of Switchfoot vibe. And I don't love it. It
Are
is
there
growing on me.
guitars?
Are there guitars? What a great question. And on that song specifically, or in the album?
Oh, just on the album.
I think yes. God, but if you told me, if you listened to the whole thing, you're like, actually, there's not. I'd be like, okay. I don't. It's so like there's a couple of these songs that are like almost metal, like "Blood for the Blood God" is super metal.
I can't wait to listen to this. I'm so pumped.
And there's one other one. I want to say maybe, Doom Dance with Gavin Rossdale from
Bush.
Bush, yeah.
Who
that
released
song
an album
rules.
this year.
Super heavy. That, and he's like, man, it's not that, I guess it's not super heavy, but there's like the bridge. He has just this killer scream, and then they rip into this banging ass bridge that is just so good. And this album is so great, man. It is fantastic. It is fantastic. And it go ahead.
Would you say it's your favorite synthwave album of all time?
Hands down.
Oh, I love that. Ooh, that's cool. Let's go.
Absolutely. And the first song, like when I was driving home for Thanksgiving with a friend of mine, I was like, check out this album that I cannot stop listening to. And I played the first song, Monster in Paradise, 5.5 minutes. It's got Dave Lombardo and somebody named Milky Way and Tyler Bates. Dave Lombardo sounds really familiar, but I'm not sure why.
And Tyler Bates does soundtracks.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, he's a soundtrack guy, I think.
And it is every single thing that you want it to be as soon as you start listening to it.
I loved it. You're explaining exactly what I've always wanted from a synthwave album.
This is what you want from a synthwave album.
Yes.
It is so much.
Let's go.
And I really cannot wait for you to listen to any of this. I want you to listen to that Lights song right now. And I think I sent it to you once when I first discovered this album, right when it came out. And I think that you might have not listened to it.
No, I probably didn't, or I would have remembered that, I think.
Right. And ultimately, I'm happy that that's how that went, because I really wanted, in that song, that Lights version, the Lights, Empress of the Damned, has been, I will say, they do use a lot of saxophone in this album.
Well, that's a very 80s thing.
But it is a very 80s thing, and I think that you will ultimately not find it to be especially grating.
Okay.
Because it fits really well.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. Okay.
But I want you to listen to Empress of the Damned, like, right now. Like, once we stop recording this...
We'll wait. We can wait.
Why don't you wait?
Because I want to wait. I want to hear this in that video. Like, I'm excited for this. I'm going to listen to this whole album eventually when we get to it. But I want to save.
Yeah, there's a song later on, track 8, I think, Ghost, featuring Power Glove, and Power Glove is another great
I know who Power Glove
synth.
is.
Yeah, and that song,
a synth
every
band.
time I hear
Power Glove is a metal band that does covers of like TV shows and stuff.
Yeah, they do lots of stuff.
Yeah,
and every time I get to that song, pretty sure it's that one, I think, what album is this? I feel like the album is over, and it has changed into some other thing where it's on auto play or whatever.
Yep.
And I'm like, and I look, and every time I look, it's like, oh yeah, because that song starts off just like a Bad Omens song. It sounds just like Bad Omens.
Oh, okay.
Which is like different, but best album of last year. Like, what am I supposed to say? It's
right,
great.
right.
It's so good.
That I'm super excited for that now. I'm really happy that came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it came out. It was kind of a surprise. We have a music channel in our Slack at work, where people just drop songs randomly as they're listening to them. We're like, here, everybody, check this out. And I saw, Gunship. I'll check this out because I like them, and I've been waiting to like have something to bite onto.
Right.
And I think it was Monster in Paradise, and I was like, oh, this is great. When is this? What is this? And I was like, their new album, it's coming. It's coming.
And the whole thing
I knew when it was coming.
I love it.
And I slammed it the moment it came out. And I just sat there getting blown back like the Maxell guy.
I love it. I love it. Yes. That makes me so excited to listen to that. So pumped. I have to say, I'm excited. I'm curious. Maybe I should wait for this, but did you ever listen to that part 3 of that Röyksopp trilogy?
You know what? I never did. I forgot all about it.
Because I was kind of surprised that didn't make it onto your list. I thought that might be something that would.
It should have.
Because the first 2 albums were on your list last year. So,
they were, and I totally
is
bailed
part
on that.
3
I
of that
forgot
trilogy.
all about it.
That's all right.
Good.
I just was curious. I just want to make you look like a fool right now. So, all right, my number 1.
Here it is. Here it comes.
This is going to be disappointing probably because you don't know this band, you don't care about them. And as I say sometimes, actually it's been the case the last few years, this is 100% just an album for me. This is one of those, that's one of those electronic albums that Patrick likes so much that nobody else in the world seems to care about. So I told you in a previous video what my number 1 was a couple months ago.
Oh, yeah?
It is this. This has been my number 1 since I heard this album for the very first time. I heard this album and I was like, yep, it probably won't get any better than that this year. And I debated about putting this, not number 1. Because there are some questionable vocal performances on this album. The guy is not the greatest singer in the world. However, that doesn't really matter with this style of music. It's kind of supposed to sound like old, low register German guy singing electronic music.
Your favorite thing in the world.
Absolutely 100%. So this is Darkness Falls Again by Beborn Beton. This is 8 tracks, 42 minutes. That is the regular edition. There is a deluxe edition, which is the version that I'm calling my number 1, whatever. Darkness Falls Again, deluxe edition. The deluxe edition, okay, so the 8 tracks, 42 minutes. The deluxe edition is 84 minutes. It's twice length. However, there's, I think, 6 bonus songs that are remixes of songs from the original 8 tracks. So I don't count those. Although they're really good. They're fine, but they're not as good as the original songs. So, however, the deluxe edition comes with a bonus disc, and the first 2 tracks on that are just 2 bonus songs. So, technically, what I'm calling my number 1 album, 10 tracks, 53 minutes long. So I'm basically taking the 8 songs on the regular edition plus the 2 bonus songs, combining them together to make a 53-minute album. Cool. So they're from Germany, obviously. This band has, I thought I wrote down how many albums they've had, but it doesn't matter. This is the style of music that I love more than any other style of music. It is just like And One, Mesh, Mine, Camouflage, similar to VNV Nation, but VNV Nation has an intensity to it.
Yeah.
This is a little bit more laid back.
Okay.
So it's definitely more along the lines of Camouflage and Mine and...
Archive?
No, Archive is totally different.
Oh, didn't you not just say them?
Maybe no, I didn't say Archive. I said And One.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
Kind of similar to And One, but this is... EBM, I guess, EBM style, sort of industrial-based, slow, groovy electronic music in the vein of sort of like a Depeche Mode type of thing, but without all the distortion, as I discussed in the previous video. Low-registered German dude singing great melodies. Synth bass is fantastic on this album. The big single is... Dancing in the Dark, it's called. That's the song I'll show you a clip of when we do this. Starts off with a cool little beat and really awesome synthwave sort of synth bass. So there's definitely some synthwave influence here. Big choruses in every song, very, very clearly defined sections in every song. The chorus is repeated a 3rd time every song. Good bridges every song.
Love a good bridge.
Yeah, there's some all the songs are relatively long. I'm not looking at the song length, but I would be shocked if any song is under 4.5 minutes long.
Bridge Masters of the Universe minus the bear. That band, whatever you thought about any of their songs or albums, it is undeniable that they could do a bridge like nobody else.
Let me look this up real quick. Like I said, it's a little anticlimactic because this isn't a band that like I really don't think anybody cares about too much other than me. Although I said the exact same thing last year about Poets of the Fall, and look who was right, me. Poets of the Fall are a great band that everybody loves now because of Alan Wake.
Well, they were already great in Control.
Correct, but no one cared. So
That's true.
no one
right.
did. So okay, so
That
this
song in Control they had is so good too. Man.
that was the song that got me into them, and I got that album of theirs. I don't have any of their albums in physical format because it's impossible to find them for less than $25. Impossible everywhere. But that song, which is without wings, we're dancing fine, dancing like nobody's watching, the darkness crowded with all its memory. Such a good song. That's the best song on that album, and really one of only 2 good songs on that album. However, their album after that was my number 1 album last year called Ghostlight. Every single song follows that same kind of formula, minus a few. Most of them are a little bit slower than that, but the guitar solos are phenomenal. Every song is great. That's such a great album. And as I said already, my top 6 albums from last year destroy every album on my list this year. So that means that album to me is like untouchable in regards to this album. So I'm looking at the lengths of the songs: 6:16, 5:23, 4:30, 5:30, 5:16, 5, 4:49, 5:27. And then it's kind of interesting because the 2 bonus songs, I was like, at first I was upset. I was like, why not just include these 2 songs on the album and then have a 10-song album instead of an 8-song album, you lazy loons. And I listened to the songs and I was kind of like, oh, I think I get it now, because both songs are sort of about God and religion. And when I first listened to it, it sounded to me like it was sort of both were sort of anti-religious songs. And I was kind of like, ooh, this kind of puts me off about the whole album. But then I sat down and I looked at the lyrics and I listened along with the song and I realized, no, it's the opposite. In my interpretation of the songs, I think both are pointing out how society has become a more negative thing because of our lack of religion, which is interesting and something that I think I definitely agree with from my perspective. And so then I was like, now I can really understand why these 2 songs were left off, because probably a majority of people wouldn't get that. And maybe my interpretation of the songs is completely wrong. Maybe both of those songs are cover songs and I don't know, and there's just not enough information out there for me to know because there's not a lot of info about this band because they're not a huge band. But whatever the case may be, I think the album's flawless, front to back. Every song, total banger. I love the production. I love every vocal line. I think this album is just... This is one of those albums that was made for me. And I said it when Mesh's last album came out called Looking Skyward, I think like 3-4 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago at this point. Like, I'm sorry, but this is just an album that was made for me. And anyone who listens to this probably won't get it. Totally fine. The music might be super boring to you. You might not like the sound of the guy's voice, whatever. But for me, this is like, no doubt, number 1 album of the year.
When did this come out?
At the beginning, kind of towards the beginning of the year.
Yeah? Did you know it would be number 1 when that happened?
The moment I listened to it, I said it was number 1.
Nice.
Yeah, the moment I listened to it, I was laying in bed, listened to the entire thing. I was like, yep, that's it. This is my number 1 for the year. And I was hoping something would beat it, you know? And like I said, like the Ruin Brothers thing is so impressive to me when I listen to it. And the Enter Shikari album, I decided to put at number 2 just when I was making my list. I had not been thinking that album was going to be so high because it's a little short. But I think it's so impressive, and I don't know if we'll ever get an Enter Shikari album that's this accessible and is what I want it to be like this. And so I think I have to give the album props because it deserves them, in my opinion. And so that's why I put Shikari at number 2, and then Ruin Brothers at number 3, and Lies at number 4. Because all year I've been thinking that Be Born Beaton was number 1, Lies was number 2, and 10 Paces was Ruin Brothers was number 3. Or I could switch those 2 and 3 around. But yeah, Enter Shikari came in at the last second, got the number 2 spot, and pushed up Ruin Brothers and Lies.
Nice.
But yeah, Be Born Beaton. They don't have that many albums out. I don't think that they're like a huge band or anything like that. But yeah, can't deny them. Fantastic. Just for me.
The Gunship album came out at the end of September. And
Okay.
I think I had more or less decided that Ashnikko was probably going to be number 1. And then this just became constantly on loop.
Mm-hmm. Did you think it was going to be number 1 the moment you first heard it?
When I heard that Lights song, Empress of the Damned, I thought this is doing the thing it needs to do.
And then the fact that it's a full album of so many songs doing what you want them to do.
Yeah.
I would imagine listening to that the first time being like, it just keeps
having
going. It just keeps
constantly
fulfilling my
bring it.
desires.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're fine. We can talk at the same time.
So yeah, that's our lists, right?
Yep, that's it. Sometime in the near future, we'll actually go through and do songs.
We'll listen to them. I think for people
Are we
who
going to record that?
I would like to.
Yeah, great. Okay.
I would like to. I just want to have kind of like a fun listening party where we're not doing anything too stressful. I mean, I don't even care if we can talk during the songs about whatever else, but just like, here, listen to this.
Yeah.
But we'll have to obviously choose the songs we want to show each other and whatnot, because we'll have to make a folder and like share stuff. We can't, because we're doing stuff remotely. We can't just be like, here, listen to this on the whim. We got to plan it out, but that's fine.
Sure. For sure.
For those of you who watch this without watching the first part, first of all, like I said at the beginning of the video, you're doing it wrong. Go watch that part. But if you insisted, I think we should reiterate here that I think that overall this year was underwhelming compared to the years we've had in the past. Part of me almost wonders if it's because we're over the COVID creativity hump. I'm not
It's a
sure.
real thing. Going back
sure
to
about
something a
that.
little bit more, like, I think that we might still be recovering, because it is technically still going on.
Well, and
so
we
it's
had-
like, 21, 22, start to see it change.
Well, on my list, I know for sure the In Flames and the Depeche Mode albums were albums that are still COVID albums. They were supposed to come out earlier, got pushed back to this year. So there's still COVID albums coming out. But I just feel like last year was a special year that everybody's creative juices came together at the right time to make just like probably the best albums of their career. A lot of bands. And this year, I don't feel like I said anything came close to like the top 6 of my album from last year. So overall,
Last year was a huge year.
Overall, I would say this year was disappointing to me. I think one of the reasons for that is the things that I was most looking forward to disappointed me the most. And
Especially some of those huge ones like that, the Heavy album and
Scar Symmetry waiting 10
Scar
years for
Symmetry one.
something.
10 years for a flop.
And just absolutely, and the Heavy had been many years since their last album. And I even think of something like the Gorillaz, which I think that album was phenomenal and could have been on my list, but because it just wasn't, it wasn't. And Blur, this is their first album in 10 years. So the fact that it didn't blow me away, disappointing. So like there were things that disappointed me this year, as there are every year. There's always disappointments.
Of course.
But, I found less this year reaching my expectations of things like that I was excited for, and more surprisingly good things, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's really nice, and that is satisfying in a different way. But man, when a band that you've been waiting for to release an album does, and it's great, that's a whole different level of satisfaction.
Yeah.
And there's a couple albums this year that did that for me, like In Flames, and, Depeche Mode wasn't a disappointment for all the reasons I mentioned, but like, I don't know. It was an interesting year overall. Do you have any
Yeah,
other
these things
thoughts?
happen. There's
On the
going to be
year?
ebbs and flows every year. I think next year, maybe Convey will finally give us an album and we don't have to worry about number one anymore. Like, because if I can only assume all this time is making it so that they have just that Viribus song over and over and over and over and over and for 15 tracks for an hour and a half. And I don't need to worry about anything anymore,
We're really there's no way that if they ever release another album that it will live up to
know
our
it.
expectations. There's just no
I
way.
know it.
I keep waiting for the new Raunchy album that they keep saying they've been working on for so many years. Where's that? There's so many things. But,
And that we'll probably get new Icy Stars at the beginning of next year.
I was
going to
say there was a new Icy Stars song that came out way earlier in this year, I thought. So they didn't release an album this year?
In the summer, they haven't made I think they have their album maybe set for February, but I was checking earlier to see what has come of their newest stuff, and it looks like they may have put out a song last month that I did not get a chance to listen to yet. So they're still doing it, and I bet it happens next year. So there are definitely things on the horizon, big time.
Well, and we know that Pendulum released an official EP this year. They haven't released an album since 2010. So
it's going to be huge.
If they release a full album next year, which I do know, I was going to bring this up when we reacted to the Pendulum EP. It's only 4 songs. They actually just released a cover of a Taylor Swift song 2 days ago.
Interesting.
Yeah, they released a cover of a Taylor Swift song that included a video of them performing the song in the studio. So I think they're looking to become a big band again for whatever that means to them. But they have a song. The reason I knew they had the EP was because I was driving around in my vehicle like 2 months ago, and I didn't have a CD with me, so I was just listening to the radio, and I was listening to The River. And that's a local community college radio station here in Nebraska. I was listening to the 89.7 The River, and I heard a sound that sounded familiar. And the sound was an amazing drum and bass beat with Rob Swire, the vocalist of Pendulum, singing over it. And I was like,
Rob Swire.
Hold on, let me finish. Let me finish.
Yep.
I was like, what in the hell? Because Pendulum has not been relevant ever in the United States, and they have not been relevant anywhere in the world for 10 years. Yeah. And I was like, what am I listening to? Like, what listener called in and requested a Pendulum song? But then I found out it was a brand new song, Pendulum featuring Bullet for My Valentine. And it was a big single that apparently has been all over the radio the last couple months.
That sounds...
And it's on that EP that I've been wanting us to react to.
Does that sound good?
What I heard, I was like... and so like...
Bullet for My Valentine rules.
Yes,
and so it's just...
I think that EP, there's 2 songs that don't feature anyone, and there's 2 songs that feature like a band or an artist or whatever. And then they just released this new song now, the Taylor Swift cover. They are priming themselves to release an album next year, and if it's half as good as their last album, it will easily be number 1 next year. And so if we get a new full-length Pendulum album and they put their effort into it, because it's not just about the heavy moments and the drum and bass and the floor to the floor and the electronics. That Pendulum is everything that happens in between those moments, the long drawn out, the synth pads, the dubstep, everything that happens in between things. If they make an album and they craft the masterpiece that I know is in them, I mean, we're talking one of the greatest albums of all time. So if that happens, watch out anybody
and let me tell
else.
You,
okay.
Rob Swire has vocally sits in a Dan Tyminski basket for me. Like, the coolest voice. Dan Tyminski has such an incredibly cool voice.
Which he released that whole album this year, by the way, really good.
Is it good?
Yeah, it's just bluegrass. There's no drums or nothing on it, just old school bluegrass.
Because all of his O Brother Arto stuff, of course, is the top of the top.
Yep.
And then he's got a couple of songs that he did with Union Station, like Dust Bowl Children, where it's like, if he sticks to this style, it is the best thing in the world. But from what I understand, his solo stuff doesn't really do that very often. So it's like, it's one of those voices where it's like, if he does the thing that fits him the best, it's killer. And Rob Swire's the same way. Like he has such a cool voice. And
Yeah.
if he uses it like he does in that 2010 album, the Island song especially, and Watercolor,
Yep.
like man, oh man, that's
Yep.
going to be huge.
Oh, man.
And I don't know if I showed you, but Nero put out a song-ish teaser thing.
You did. You sent it
Yes.
to me.
So I think we will probably get a Nero album next year.
A Nero album, which
You can't just...
if we
they've
got a Nero album and a Pendulum album in the same year,
there's not enough electricity in the world
There's
to keep
not.
those things spinning.
and
Oh man, that you've got My Eyes with the first Nero album. You've got Satisfy with the second Nero album. The third album I don't like. What they bring next? What if it has something better than Satisfy? How could it be? How could it be possible?
I don't think it is, but they did do that
happy.
whole
Let 'em
symphony
try.
thing. They did that whole like electronic symphony or whatever they called it. What if it was Nero featuring an orchestra?
Kill me. I love it.
Bring it on.
It's all
just
over
like,
for me.
It's just like you tell me Pendulum featuring a metal band.
Oh man.
Let's go. You know,
Yes. Well, yeah, because they already worked with In Flames.
Right. And now they have this song, which I've only heard pieces of, with Bullet for My Valentine. Get out of here. What if, and they're huge enough that they could do a song with like, here's Ellie Goulding for a song.
Do you remember that Bullet for My Valentine single from a couple of years ago? I think it was Knives or something like that.
I don't know if I've ever heard a Bullet for My Valentine song.
Really? Mm-hmm. Interesting. Because that song was outrageous.
Yeah, I don't think
they
I've ever heard one.
They've got one album, I think, called Venom that I love. Top to bottom, fantastic. And they had a new single a couple of years ago called Knives or something like that. That was by far the heaviest thing they'd ever done.
Oh,
and it was
okay.
white hot. And I don't know what happened with that. If there was an album that it was attached to, I totally lost track of all of that. But
There probably
they do
was.
good work. And having them with Pendulum, with new technology,
You just, because I mean, Pendulum is pretty much just Rob Swire. And so like trusting him to do whatever he wants, you know, all right. I think people will know how excited we would be for those things. So thank you very
a lot
much.
of potential next year.
Yeah, a lot of potential. I do have several albums already in my calendar for next year, so we might as well look what they are. Because I think one,
There are several solo artists, like they have like a name like Rain Paris, that don't have any music yet, but the singles are starting to stack up. And I would love to see a bunch of brand new artists put out their first album next year in ways that I'm really excited
okay,
about.
I see, because the singles are stacking. Okay. So in January, I have on the 26th a band called Caligula's Horse. They're releasing an album. It's just, I'm not saying that any of these are going to be great or anything. I'm just saying that's what's on my list to check out. The 16th of February. Oh, a brand new Mother song, Mother album. And the single they released, fire. And I think that they're another band that I've been waiting for them to release an album that's a little bit more straightforward. Their last album was very conceptual. If they release an album full of just banger after banger after banger, like I know they can, oof. So Mother, that's February 16th.
That new Nero album is called Into the Unknown.
Okay, on March 22nd, there's a metal band with female-fronted metal band that's been really big this year with their singles called New Year's Day. They have I think it might be a debut album or maybe it's their second album. That comes out March 22nd. Hold on, here is... And that's everything I have listed. You know,
Okay, I haven't picked out. I don't know any release dates for anything that I want yet.
I don't know release dates for stuff. I mean, I know release dates, but that's just stuff I've come across, and I'm like, dang, why are you promoting your album in March? Well, that's only 3 months away. So,
Right.
Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. We always love doing these videos. We will. Actually, that's something we should record yet this year, is when we sit down and have a little listening party for a lot of this music.
That's fine. I'm into it.
And then what I'll have to do is follow the nightmare of copyrights that will come with that. But we'll just have to see. Maybe it won't matter because it's only a single song from each band, you know, if we do that. because that's what my plan was going to be, only a single song. So
Yeah, for sure. If we listen to all these albums, we'll never stop.
well, no, I just meant like, like here's part of this song that I like. Here's part of this song that I like.
Oh, I see. Not even the whole song itself.
Because that's something I would do that would make everybody else very mad. But anyway, whatever. We'll be doing that.
Yep.
We'll be coming at you soon with new stuff. I also will say right now that I have a special surprise I'm going to release for all the Metallica fans around Christmas. I'm not sure when this is going to be coming out, but maybe before then. Hopefully before then. So be on the lookout for that. And if not, we'll see you guys next year for our 10-year anniversary. Yeah, I guess 10-year anniversary edition.
More or less.
Of our top 12 albums of, I guess next year will be 2024. So thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next year.